Kayla swiped the barcode across the scanner, the machine beeping in rhythm as a line of customers shuffled forward. Her fingers moved fast, practiced, flipping open a worn paperback someone brought for trade. "Half credit," she said flatly, not even looking up. The man nodded, already used to her tone. The bell above the door chimed. She didn't glance up, until the hush that followed made her pause. She raised her eyes, fingers freezing mid-scan. A sleek black car was parked, right in front, engine still humming. The man who walked in didn't belong here. Not in this neighborhood, not in this bookstore, not with shoes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He stepped inside like the air shifted around him. Tailored jacket, open collar, wristwatch, that gleamed too loud in this quiet place. Lucas Grant. Kayla's jaw set, but she didn't say a word. Her eyes dropped back to the register, and she resumed scanning like nothing happened. Lucas took his time, glancing at the shelves, fingers, brushing along the spines. He stopped near the local poetry section, picked up a thin volume, and flipped through it like he was reading code. Kayla watched from the corner of her eye, her lips pressing tight. He walked up slowly and placed the book on the counter. "Didn't know you carried this kind of thing," he said, voice calm, deep. She scanned it. "You know what they say. Even broken clocks." He raised an eyebrow. "Still holding a grudge?" She handed him the book without meeting his gaze. "You're not important enough for that." A flicker of something crossed his face. Just for a second. Then it was gone. He took the book, pulled out his card, and tapped it against the reader. The silence between them stretched. "Place looks the same," he said, glancing around. "Dusty. Cramped. You still run it all by yourself?" "I still breathe all by myself, too," Kayla replied coolly. "Imagine that." Lucas smirked slightly, folding the receipt. "I heard the apartment upstairs is open." "Who told you that?" He shrugged. "People talk." "I didn't know billionaires listened to people." He ignored the jab, resting, his hand lightly on the counter. "I need a place, quiet, temporary. Figured it'd be easier than getting swarmed downtown." Her eyes locked on his. "It's not available for corporate therapy." He leaned in a fraction. "Kayla, I'm not here to—" She held up a hand, cutting him off. "Market rate, first and last month up front. No discounts for the rich. And—" "I don't care who you are." Lucas nodded, almost amused. "Fair enough." She reached under the counter, pulled out a clipboard with the lease form, and slid it across to him. Their fingers brushed for a second. He looked at her. She didn't flinch, didn't look up. She was already moving on to the next customer. The man in line stepped forward, glancing awkwardly between them. Lucas took the clipboard and walked toward the reading table by the window. Kayla didn't watch him go. She just picked up the next book, scanned it, and kept her voice steady. "Next." Boxes scraped against the stairwell walls as Lucas carried the last of his things up to the apartment above the bookstore. Kayla didn't offer to help, didn't even acknowledge him as he passed her in the hallway, her arms full of returns and invoices. She moved to the side with barely a glance, her silence saying more than words. By evening, the sound of footsteps above her head became a new rhythm. His footsteps. The floor creaked in places she'd forgotten creaked, now made obvious by his presence. She tried to ignore it, but every soft thump, every shuffle, crawled under her skin like a splinter. The next morning she walked out to find him in the hallway, shirt half-buttoned, running a hand through his hair as he locked his door. Their eyes met. He offered a faint smile, like it might bridge something. She walked past him without a word, keys jangling in her grip. The day dragged. Customers came and went, and through the dusty front windows she saw his car parked unusually close to the curb, just like everything else about him. It didn't quite fit. By midweek the tension burst. A sharp knock echoed through her ceiling, followed by the muffled thump of bass. Kayla stormed up the stairs and banged on his door. It opened a moment later, Lucas standing in joggers and a black t-shirt, towel draped over his shoulder. Do you own stock in subwoofers? She snapped. He blinked. It was just music. I didn't think it was that loud. It rattled my teacups. He glanced down at her, one brow raised. Didn't peg you for the porcelain type. Don't try charming your way out of it, she shot back. I wasn't trying to. She stepped closer, voice low but sharp. You don't get to move into my space and turn it into your personal club lounge. Lucas tilted his head, something flickering in his eyes. Your space? Pretty sure I'm paying rent. And pretty sure I didn't ask you to, she replied. You're a tenant. That's it. A beat of silence passed before he said quietly, You always this welcoming? Or is it just me? She didn't answer, just turned on her heel and went back downstairs, the sound of her boots pounding against the steps. That night, the music didn't return. But something else lingered. His question. Saturday brought the neighborhood's quarterly small business mixer. Kayla hadn't planned to go, but her friend Nadine from the flower shop dragged her out with promises of free wine and an excuse to vent. The gathering was on the rooftop of the bakery across the street, string lights flickering above folding, tables lined with paper plates and cheese trays. She was pouring herself a drink when she spotted him. Lucas stood near the edge, talking with the owner of the bike shop like he'd been part of the block for years. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire tonight, just jeans, rolled sleeves, and quiet confidence. Kayla tried to keep her eyes elsewhere, but they found their way back to him too often. Eventually, he walked over, holding 2 cups of lemonade. She gave him a look. Bribery? Peace offering, he said. No music, no charm, just citrus. She didn't take the cup. I can carry a box or 2 if you need help tomorrow, he added. Saw you struggling with a shipment last week. I wasn't struggling, she said. You dropped a whole stack of books on your foot. She folded her arms. I meant to. Lucas chuckled softly and set the second cup down on the table between them. Offer stands. Kayla didn't respond. He walked away without pressing. The next morning she opened the store early, her keys sticking slightly in the lock. She leaned her weight against the door, and it gave in with a small creak. As she stepped inside, something felt off. The back door, where the hinge had been loose for months, now swung silently. She tested it once, twice. Smooth. No creak, no resistance. Her jaw clenched. She didn't need help, didn't want help, and especially not from him. That afternoon, she worked with quiet agitation, tossing books onto shelves a little harder than necessary, straightening displays she didn't care about. Nadine popped in around closing, mentioned seeing Lucas buying a toolbox at the hardware store the night before. Kayla forced a smile and muttered something about nosy neighbors. She closed early, not out of fatigue, but from a rising irritation she couldn't place. Locking the glass door, she stepped out, tugging her coat tighter as the late sun dipped behind the buildings. And there he was, sitting on the bookstore steps like he belonged there. Elbows on his knees, head tilted back, watching the sky change colors. He looked over as she paused. Didn't think you'd close early, he said. She crossed her arms. Didn't think you'd camp on my steps. Lucas smiled faintly. You look like you could use air. So could I. She didn't sit, just stood, watching him for a moment, then pulled her keys from her pocket and walked past him, up the stairs to her apartment. The door closed behind her, but the sound of him sitting there lingered longer than it should have. Lucas started lingering longer in the bookstore, pretending to browse but clearly just looking for a reason to talk. At first, Kayla ignored him, brushing past his casual greetings with clipped nods and monosyllables. But he didn't stop. When a customer asked about a rare out-of-print title, Lucas chimed in before she could respond, rattling off a publisher name and a similar recommendation. Kayla raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. He just shrugged. I read more than stock reports. That week, He showed up at the community street fair helping the bakery stall hand out cupcakes. Kayla caught sight of him laughing with a group of kids, powdered sugar on his black t-shirt. Nadine nudged her and whispered, "Looks like Billionaire. Barbie's trying to play small-town Ken." Kayla rolled her eyes but found herself watching anyway. Later that afternoon, Lucas dropped by the shop and helped an elderly woman carry a stack of novels to her car, without being asked. When he returned, Kayla said, "You trying to buy good karma or just bored?" "Neither," he replied. "I like being useful." She stared at him a second longer than she meant to. "You're still not getting a discount." Lucas grinned. "I wouldn't dare ask." As days passed, their exchanges shifted. He started dropping sarcastic one-liners when the store got busy, and Kayla threw them right back. She accused him of rearranging the poetry section just to annoy her. He denied it, of course, but the smirk gave him away. She caught herself laughing once, really laughing, and it startled her. So she immediately went back to being curt the rest of the day. One night Kayla stayed late sorting a new shipment. Her head ached and her body felt heavy, but she pushed through, shelving each book with mechanical focus. Lucas walked in carrying a bag of takeout. She waved him off before he could speak. "Not now. You don't look great," he said. "Thanks. I mean it. Sit down before you fall over." "I'm fine." But the second she tried to lift the last box, she swayed, and Lucas was at her side before she hit the ground. "You're burning up," he muttered, steadying her. "I just need water," she whispered, sitting against the wall. Without asking, he walked behind the counter, washed his hands, and began ringing up a customer who'd been lingering. Kayla started to protest, but he cut her off with a look that said, "Just this once." She watched as he moved with ease, finding titles, recommending others, cracking light jokes that made people smile. Somehow he didn't break the rhythm of the place. He respected it. She dozed for a few minutes, and when she opened her eyes, again the shop was empty, and Lucas was wiping the counter clean. "Don't get used to this," she mumbled. He smiled without looking up. "Wouldn't dream of it." The next morning, she opened the door to a paper bag on her welcome mat, coffee, toast, and a note scribbled in messy handwriting. "Eat something that isn't stubbornness." She rolled her eyes but didn't throw it away. Later that evening, as she was closing up, she heard voices coming from upstairs. One voice, Lucas's, deep and steady. The other, a woman's, soft, familiar in a way that stung. Kayla wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their laughter floated down through the open stairwell, and it hit her like a splash of cold water. Her fingers paused on the lock, her chest tightening in a way she hated. The next day, she barely looked at him. When he greeted her, she responded with a polite nod and nothing more. Lucas noticed immediately. He lingered in the shop longer than usual, tried to crack a joke about her obsessively organizing the fiction shelf, but her reply was cold. He watched her move through the store with that same old wall around her. Whatever steps they'd taken forward were slipping back fast. By evening, he couldn't take it. He stood at her door, one hand hovering before knocking. When she opened it, still in her bookstore apron, her face gave nothing away. Lucas held her gaze and said quietly, "Why do you hate me so much?" Kayla didn't answer his question right away. She stepped aside, wordless, letting him into her apartment like the silence between them had grown too large to hold at the door. Lucas walked in slowly, eyes drifting to the small sofa. The books, stacked like bricks along the walls, the takeout containers from nights she forgot to cook. It was lived in and real, nothing like the penthouses he'd walked through in his world. He stayed standing as she crossed her arms, leaning against the edge of the kitchen counter. "I don't hate you," she said finally, "but I hate what you represent." Lucas didn't flinch. "Because I have money?" "Because that night," she cut in, voice sharp, "you treated me like an invoice, like I was something to pay for and forget." "I didn't forget," he said, his voice low. Not for a second. She laughed bitterly. Sure, you remembered. That's why you never called, never texted, just vanished. I assumed you wanted it that way, Lucas replied. We didn't exactly exchange numbers. It felt like maybe we both wanted to forget it happened. Well, I didn't. She looked away, eyes narrowed. I mean, I did, but not like that. Lucas moved closer. Not enough to crowd her, just enough that she could see he wasn't hiding behind anything now. I was a mess back then. That night, yeah, it was reckless. But I didn't think I'd see you again. And when I walked into your store, and there you were, you thought you could just waltz in and play the charming tenant, she snapped. Make it all go away. No, he said softly. I just didn't know how to undo it. They stood in the thick quiet of confession, both breathing like something heavy had been unzipped. Kayla sank onto the armrest of the couch, staring at a crack in the floorboard she'd been meaning to fix for months. I've worked for everything, she said. This place, this life. I built it. You dropped money like it meant nothing. And that night, I thought maybe it meant something. Then you left a check, like it was cleanup. Lucas's face twisted. I'm sorry. She nodded slowly, biting the inside of her cheek. You still act like you can buy your way into or out of anything. I wasn't always like that, he said, sitting down across from her. My mom raised me in a one-bedroom apartment. Some nights, we boiled water to stay warm. I used to sit on the fire escape with a textbook and pray the neighbors wouldn't scream while I studied. Kayla looked at him. The version of him she'd never imagined starting to take shape. I made my first million by 25, he continued, and I thought that would fix everything. That money would mean I never had to feel small again. But it just made everything louder and lonelier. Her tone softened, just slightly. Then why still lead with it? Why come in here like you? Own every room? He let out a breath. Habit, maybe fear, I don't know. But I don't want to do that here. Not with you. For a while, neither spoke. The clock ticked. Outside, a car rolled by, headlights washing across the wall. Something between them had shifted, but not enough to settle. The next day brought its usual rhythm until mid-afternoon, when Kayla's landlord showed up unexpectedly, papers in hand, a familiar sneer on his face. He mentioned raising the rent, muttered about property taxes and big plans for the block. Kayla's stomach twisted, but she kept her voice calm. You can't just... It's all in the lease, he said, tapping the folder. 30-day notice, or renegotiate. Lucas walked in during the conversation, catching the tail end of the threat. He didn't speak right away, just listened. After the landlord left, Kayla threw the folder onto the counter, pacing. I can't afford a hike like this, she muttered. I barely make it as is. Lucas watched her, then said carefully, Let me talk to him. She spun. Absolutely not. I know people, I can... No, Lucas, she snapped. You don't get to sweep in and fix this with your bank account. I'm not trying to buy your store. Yes, you are, she yelled, her voice cracking. Maybe not literally, but every time something gets hard, you try to solve it like you're God with a wallet. Lucas stepped back, stunned. That's not fair. I don't want your money, I don't want your help. I want space. I want my life to be mine. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, jaw tight. I think you should move out, she said, quieter now. This isn't working. He looked at her like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression told him not to. Lucas nodded once, turned, and left without a word. That night, Kayla didn't hear footsteps above her. No creaking, no movement. It was silent. Too silent. She climbed the stairs before dawn, heart pounding for reasons she couldn't explain. The apartment door was ajar. She pushed it open slowly. The place was empty. Shelves bare. Closet open. Just the faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air. and the silence screamed louder than his footsteps ever had. The morning rush came, out of nowhere. Kayla stood behind the counter, bewildered as the line snaked past the door. A local photographer was snapping pictures near the poetry wall, while a couple whispered excitedly about the place from the article. Nadine rushed in mid-shift, waving her phone in Kayla's face. "You haven't seen this?" she asked breathlessly. On the screen was a headline from a popular lifestyle blog. "From one-night stands to bestsellers, the billionaire living." Above the bookstore. The article was full of glossy shots of the store, sprinkled with vague but suggestive hints about a mysterious woman entrepreneur and her equally mysterious upstairs tenant. The comments were already flooded with curiosity. Kayla's throat tightened. She hadn't authorized this. Her bookstore had never been busier, but the attention made her skin crawl. She tried to keep pace, ringing up purchases with mechanical precision. But her eyes kept drifting toward the door, half expecting him to walk in with that maddening smirk. He didn't. All day she smiled through clenched teeth. Her quiet sanctuary transformed into a circus. When the last customer finally left, she slumped against the wall in the back room. Nadine popped her head in with a knowing grin. "This has a Lucas written all over it." Kayla didn't answer, just stared at the cracked ceiling tiles. The surge felt like a gift wrapped in dynamite. She walked home that night and found herself slowing in front of the upstairs apartment. It remained dark, untouched, empty. The chaos only intensified. Interviews were requested. Local news showed up unannounced. A tech investor offered to buy out the store's name rights. Kayla declined everything. She didn't trust any of it. She needed time to breathe, to think. But the universe had other plans. Her landlord showed up on a Wednesday morning with a fresh suit and a smug expression. He pulled out a file and let it slap onto the counter. "I'm selling the building," he said casually. "Got a buyer already. Big offer. Unless you can top it." Kayla stared at him, stunned. "You can't do that without notice," he shrugged. 30 days. Unless you make a better deal." She waited until he left, then locked the door and sank to the floor. This place wasn't just a job. It was her second skin. Her heartbeat lived in every shelf, every loose floorboard. She didn't have the money to compete. She had barely recovered from the last threat. And she knew, Lucas had probably pulled some string. To get that article written, she wanted to scream. That night she stayed late trying to make sense of her inventory numbers. At some point she heard the door creak open. Her head snapped up. Lucas stood there in the doorway, hands in his pockets, gaze steady. "I didn't leak the story," he said before she could speak. She folded her arms tightly. "But you knew about it," he nodded. "I knew someone from the site. I mentioned the store. I didn't think it would blow up like this." Kayla laughed bitterly. "Of course you didn't. You just wanted to help in your own billionaire way." Lucas walked in slowly, pulling a folded document from his coat. "I heard about the building. I talked to the bank." Her eyes narrowed. "You talked to who?" "I can't buy it for you," he said gently. "I won't. That's not what you want. But I can invest. Silent partner. No strings. You make the decisions. You write the checks. I'll transfer the capital. On paper, you'll own it." She stared at him, lips parted, words caught in her throat. "I believe in what you've built," he added. "You don't need saving. But sometimes even the strongest people need a hand staying afloat." She shook her head slowly. "I don't want your pity." "It's not pity," he said. "It's belief." Her walls started rising again, ready to shut him out. "And what's in it for you?" Lucas looked her dead in the eyes. "I get to stop running from the one good thing I stumbled into." Kayla exhaled, long and slow. Her pride roared in her chest, but beneath it was something quieter, something that sounded a lot like hope. "I'll think about it," she said. 3 days later she called him. They met at the back table of the bookstore. No lawyers, No drama, just a clean agreement. A new deed, new papers. She signed slowly, feeling her own hands tremble as the pen moved across the lines. When it was done, Lucas pulled out a check. His first month's rent. He placed it on the counter with a crooked grin. "Guess I'm yours for real now." Kayla stared at it. Then, at him. Her lips curled into the smallest smile she'd allowed in months. "Damn right you are," she said. Kayla leaned back in the new office chair she never imagined affording, surveying her bookstore like it had grown new walls, new purpose, new light. The title deed now bore her name. Her rent days were over. Her landlord days had begun. Customers still flowed in steadily thanks to the article, but this time she wasn't overwhelmed. She had staff now, a schedule, even a waiting list for the weekly book club, which had grown so much she had to rearrange the entire front half of the store to fit folding chairs and mismatched cushions. She was thriving, and it showed in the way she moved, shoulders squared, voice steady, her presence unmistakable. Lucas had become a fixture too, not with loud gestures or flashy donations, but by showing up. He helped restock shelves, chatted with regulars like he'd always been there, even remembered kids' names and the genres they liked. Gone was the outsider aura. People greeted him like one of their own. Someone had even started calling him the bookstore guy, and he didn't correct them. He wore the label like a badge. One rainy Thursday evening, the book club gathered around with mugs of tea and wine, the air thick with that comforting scent of pages and cinnamon from the nearby bakery. Kayla stood at the front, reading a passage from a new memoir. Just as she paused to let a line sink in, the door opened quietly. Lucas slipped in, hair damp from the drizzle, shoulders relaxed. He didn't say anything, just took an empty seat near the back and listened. When someone suggested reading aloud, Lucas raised his hand. Kayla arched an eyebrow but nodded. He walked up slowly, took the book from her hands, and read the next section with calm, deliberate rhythm. His voice was lower than hers, his cadence softer, but there was gravity in the way he delivered each line. The room went silent, the kind of silence that listens, not just hears. When he finished, he handed the book back to her and returned to his seat. No fanfare, no smugness, just presence. Kayla's smile, unguarded and real, caught even her off guard. Later, after chairs were stacked and the last guest had waved goodbye, she found him waiting near the front shelves, running a finger along the spine of a hardcover. "You've got a good group," he said. "They like stories," she replied. "Even the ones that hurt." They stepped out into the damp air, walking slowly beneath the yellowed glow of old street lamps. Conversation flowed easily now. No sharp edges, no landmines. Lucas spoke about a book he loved as a kid, and she told him about the first time she sold one to a stranger and realized this shop wasn't just survival. It was hers. They turned a corner, and he got quiet. Then he said, "I was 9 when we got evicted. My mom worked 3 jobs, but she missed rent by 2 weeks. We came home one day and the locks were changed. All our stuff was gone. I slept in the back of her friend's car for a month. After that, I swore no one would ever have that kind of control over me again." Kayla didn't say anything for a long time. She didn't try to comfort him or offer pity. She just let him speak. When he finally looked at her, something in his expression softened. Like saying it out loud had cracked open a layer of armor. When they reached her building, he stopped at the foot of the steps. "I'm glad you made me pay," he said, voice barely above a whisper. She met his gaze. "Me too." He didn't lean in, didn't ask to come up. He just nodded once and turned toward the stairs leading to his apartment. Kayla stood there, hand on her doorknob, watching him climb one step at a time. Something shifted inside her. It wasn't grand or cinematic, just real. A quiet settling of dust after years of chaos. And as she finally stepped inside, She realized for the first time in a long time, she wasn't bracing for something to fall apart. The shelves stretched farther now. New titles, more staff, a second register. The little bookstore that once teetered on the edge had become something solid, something people looked forward to walking into. Kayla stood near the back wall, arms crossed, watching the final touches go up in the new reading lounge she'd dreamed about for years. A soft couch, warm lighting, mismatched cushions that somehow all worked. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. The grand opening wasn't for another week, but tonight was a soft launch for friends, regulars, and the people who believed in her long before she did. Lucas stood near the drink table, not in the center, not trying to draw attention. He poured lemonade into plastic cups, chatting quietly with one of the older regulars about historical fiction. He wore his usual low-key look, fitted jeans, sleeves rolled, hair slightly out of place. No press, no suits, no fanfare, just him. He'd helped install the light fixtures last week, stayed late to carry in the couches, even argued with a supplier on her behalf over back-ordered rugs. He didn't ask for thanks. He never took credit. And when people asked who designed the wall space, he always pointed to Kayla. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, thanking guests, introducing new members of the team, accepting compliments with a smile and a nod. Every now and then, her eyes found him. And every time, he was already looking at her. The night winded down. Guests trickled out. The last slice of cake disappeared. Kayla flipped the sign to "closed," locked the door, and turned to find him already headed for the stairs to the roof. The sky was clear, the city humming beneath them. They sat side by side, shoulders close but not touching, legs stretched, out on the cold concrete. Lucas handed her a blanket from the emergency stash he kept in a crate up there. She wrapped it around herself without a word. The silence between them had evolved, no longer loaded with tension or unspoken accusations. Now it was just peace. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. "You're late on rent," she said casually, holding it out. He smirked, taking it. "Didn't realize this was a business meeting. You're not exempt just because you can hang a light fixture without electrocuting yourself." He opened it slowly, expecting paperwork. Instead, he pulled out a single, brass key. He stared at it, then back at her. She was watching him, calm but unreadable. "It's your apartment," she said. "But my rules." His fingers curled around the key. For a moment he didn't speak, just looked down at the small object that somehow weighed more than any investment he'd ever made. "What are the rules?" "No leaving without notice. No music after 10. No pretending like this is temporary." She paused. "And no trying to pay for things that aren't yours to fix." Lucas nodded once. "I can follow that." She leaned back on her hands, eyes on the stars overhead. "I used to think control was the only way to survive. But lately, I've been learning how to let things happen. How to let people stay." He didn't respond right away. Then he shifted slightly closer, voice low. "This time, I'm not leaving after one night." Her head tilted just enough for their eyes to meet. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. As the city lights shimmered around them, Kayla leaned her head against his shoulder, letting the silence settle in like an exhale. It wasn't a love story written in dramatic gestures or sudden confessions. It was something better, earned, steady, true. Some debts you repay with money. Others, with staying. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who believes second chances deserve rent.